The most commonly used piece of functionality in the PPUI Handicap System is going to be the returning of scores for players who take part in competitions. So in this video, I'm going to show you how administrators can return scores for the players who take part in their events. At the moment, I'm logged in as the Tralee administrator. We're currently on the competitions page for the Tralee Club, and we can see that they have one competition currently within the system, which is the Gents Stroke Play Championship. So if we click on the name of this competition, we're taken to the competition management page for it. We can see that right now there are a number of entrants already entered into the competition, but none of them have any scores returned. So how do we return scores for a player? It's pretty easy. What we need to do is go to the player in question when we have their cards in our hand. We click on this plus button and it gives us the option to return a single 18-hole card for that player. What we can see is that in a 36-hole competition, every player will have the ability to have 2 scores returned for them. So let me create the first score for this player. We pick the date that they played on, which is within the range of the competition. So from the 5th of April to the 7th of April are the options here. And over here we can enter the gross score for that 18-hole period. Let's imagine this player had a 51. We can still see that they're shown in a red row, which indicates that they haven't yet got enough returns to be considered eligible for this competition, since it's a 36-hole competition. So we click on the plus button again. We notice now that we can no longer click on a plus button for this player, which means that we've already added enough cards to be eligible. However, we need to fully return this one. So let's enter the date of play for the second round for this player, and let's enter their gross score. And as you can see, the graphs at the top here have started to update, and the players row has become grey to indicate that they're no longer considered an NR, that they have enough cards to be considered eligible for the competition. The system has also done some calculation on their gross score, their net differential, and the potential adjustment for this player as a result of these returns. So let's quickly add some more scores for some other players. Let's pick some dates for this player and add some scores. Obviously, all of the data on screen for handicaps is right now in test, but in the live system will all be correct for the period in which the competition takes place. So we're quickly adding scores for each of these players so that they become eligible and start to take part in the calculation of CSS. So if we scroll to the top of the screen, we've now got 3 players fully returned. Our graphs are starting to show the makeup of our field, the buffer achievement in our competition, and to plot players relative to the different brackets in the buffer. So we can see this player had a 95, which was a net differential of 1, which means he gets no adjustment. When we look at the top of the screen, the CSS has changed from +3 reduction only to a 47, which means no change from the standard scratch for the venue based on these scores. And we can scroll down and continue to complete the returns for our entrants until we're ready and happy that we've done them all. I've intentionally skipped a player because I want to demonstrate the NR functionality that exists within the system. So what we want clubs and county boards to do is always enter players who take part in competitions even if they don't return a score. So in this case, this player, Dave McCullough from the Lucan Club, will be considered an NR by the system. This is represented by the red row. And all players who don't return a card but do enter a competition should be added to the competition but not have scores created for them. The system will then track the number of NRs per member so that the handicap subcommittee can maintain some monitoring of that number. So now that we've entered scores for almost our entire field and we have 1 NR, let's take a look at the impact that these scores have had on the CSS for this competition. What we can see is that our field has 6 fully returned people. 30% of those are in the first grade, so grade 1 players or senior players. 50% are grade 2 or intermediate players, and 20% are grade 3 or junior players. So this influences how difficult the CSS is calculated to be on the day and is used by the system to work out how difficult conditions were on the day. On the right hand side we can see that half of our field have achieved the standard scratch buffer, which is equal to 2 shots above the 18-hole standard scratch per round. So in this case, the competition standard scratch score for this venue is 94, double the venue standard scratch, and the buffer is 94 plus 2 per round, 98. So half our field have made that, and in this case, that piece of data with the makeup of our field is used to calculate that on this day, conditions were neither either easy or difficult. And as a result, no adjustment is made to the venue standard scratch, and the competition standard scratch score for 18 holes is set at 47. In this 36-hole competition, as a result of this, the overall competition standard scratch for 36 holes is 94. If we look now further down at our entrance, you'll notice that players have adjustments alongside them. So in this case, the first player had a net score of 109, which is 15 shots above our 94 competition standard scratch, and he's going to get a minus 0.1 adjustment, which is equal to a 0.1 back, essentially. We can notice that our second player has a net differential of 6, so he's 6 shots above the competition standard scratch of 94, and he too will get a 0.1 back. This player had a 95 net, 1 shot above the competition standard scratch, and he will get no adjustment since he's considered to be within this range on the left hand side in the graph, which is called the CSS buffer. Any player who gets within 2 shots of CSS per 18 holes will have no adjustment applied, since we will consider their handicap to be quite close to correct. Further down we can see that this player had a 90 net, playing off minus 6. The system then says that he was 4 shots below the competition standard scratch of 94. So for each shot below that competition standard scratch, he will be cut 0.1. Overall, for this competition, this player will be cut from minus 6 real handicap to minus 5.6 real handicap, a cut of 0.4 shots. The next player was 8 shots above the 94 CSS, so we'll get a 0.1 back. And finally, the last player was 3 shots above the 94 CSS, which means he's within the buffer of 2 shots within CSS per 18 holes, and he will have no adjustment applied to his handicap, neither positive nor negative. So this kind of sums up how we add scores and how they impact the CSS for competitions. And it also highlights how we're going to track non-returns within the PPUI handicap system.